Hello, everyone. This is the most magnificent bird, Beak, speaking to you today. And in today's video, I'm actually going to be doing a couple of things. We're going to be doing some road maps, specifically the road maps involving the second mini event with the Rotten Romance event right now. Plus, I'm going to be going to go get my second copy of Sweetie Princess. And while I'm doing all of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. I'm not going to talk about it too long because I already did that about more than a week ago. I'm just going to talk a little bit about who I think is going to win, And then also, the big important thing I'm going to talk about, which is what I've been wanting to do for a couple of days now. I'm going to be talking about Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. Oh yeah, I have some thoughts on that one. But as we're doing the road maps, I'm generally going to get into that discussion of Thanksgiving. There will be some spoilers regarding Thanksgiving. But as far as the killer reveal, killer motive, I'm not going to mention anything about that. I'm going to mainly talk about the setup of the plot, and I'm going to be going over the kills. Although I'm not going to name every single character that gets killed, I'm just going to name like one or two that end up getting killed. But yeah, before we get started, I hope all of you are doing good and staying safe out there. I'm doing good, and honestly, I can't wait to talk about Thanksgiving. Hoo-hoo! Oh, man. But anyway, alright, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Right here, we're going to do the chained strings roadmap. As you can see, I've already done Act 1. Now we're going to do Act 2. Now, talking about the Super Bowl, like I said, I'm not really going to talk about the Super Bowl all that long because it's the one thing that I've already talked about, specifically when we went over the Mythic Market. That's where I really went into it, and I have this Disney fairy tale prince and princess ending theory, which, I'm not really going to go over that again. If you're very interested to see what that theory is about, it's in that video. Yeah, so I pretty much I still think Kansas City is going to probably win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I could be wrong, who knows? But I just don't see the 49ers beating Taylor Swift, Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. You noticed who I said first? I didn't say Patrick Mahomes. I said TS, Taylor Swift. Oh gosh, like last week, and I'm sure this week, how have you guys been loving hearing the news and the media talk about whenever they bring up the Super Bowl? Who's the first name you're going to hear? Oh no, it's not going to be Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce or Brock Purdy or even Christian McCaffrey. Those are players that are actually playing in the Super Bowl. Oh no, the media is going to trip over themselves talking about Taylor Swift and whether or not if she's going to be able to make it to Las Vegas in time. Like, come on, who... Like, anybody that's actually a football fan, who cares if a celebrity is going to get there or not? I mean, but I tell you, the guy, I believe it was last Monday, the guy that usually does the ABC World News, oh God, he was tripping over himself wanting to talk about Taylor Swift. He did mention Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes, But you want to guess how many times he mentioned the two quarterbacks? He only mentioned the two quarterbacks one time. You want to guess how many times he brought up Taylor Swift or referenced Taylor Swift or mentioned her? About 4 or 5 different times. And it gives me a mental headache just even talking about it. That's why I don't want to. That's why I don't want to talk about it too long. Like, my God, I mean, who cares? Taylor Swift is not. She's not playing in the Super Bowl, which, okay, they did bring up Usher because he is singing the halftime, performance. Which, I mean, that's fine. He is involved in the Super Bowl one way or another. But for them to really talk about Taylor Swift more than Usher, who's actually going to be performing during the halftime show, like, come on. She's just going to be sitting up there in the skybox or whatever you want to call it, and they're going to, cut from the game to her reactions. Like, that's probably why I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. And I'll close on this note about the Super Bowl. I still do think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win, so they're celebrating, and, Travis Kelce, he can propose to Taylor Swift and give all the people that still think it's legit something happy to be about, something to give them something to be happy about for the next couple weeks. Like, oh man, I'm getting dumb just talking about it. That's why I'm just gonna end it about here. I do think the Chiefs are gonna win, but I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. And even though I do think the Chiefs are still gonna win, I will say good luck to the San Francisco 49ers. In my opinion, y'all deserve it way more than Kansas City, but why would the NFL pass up the opportunity to make the Kansas City Chiefs the new quote-unquote new dynasty of the NFL? Why would they pass on that opportunity? They are essentially like the New England Patriots of this generation. Oh, yeah, everybody back in 2019, I think it was, everybody loved Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs because they were the quote-unquote underdogs, but now fans are starting to slowly turn on them, and Taylor Swift being in their corner only hurts them a little bit more. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Super Bowl. And hey, if I'm wrong and, come February 12th, if it's announced that the 49ers have won the Super Bowl, I will get up on here and admit I was wrong. And I hope I am wrong. But I guess we'll see when that time comes. We shall see. It's a shame that it's come down to this, that, that the media no longer wants to only talk about the Super Bowl. When it comes to the Super Bowl, they want to talk about a celebrity that isn't even, just because that celebrity happens to be dating a certain player. Like, it's so stupid. So glad I brought Kenny with me, but man, having him, that's... I wish you could bring Green, strong tunes, but it doesn't matter, we got it. Who says Kenny still isn't useful? I mean, he is in that situation, for sure. So, now, let's talk about Thanksgiving. This is what I've been wanting to get into. So, yeah, Thanksgiving. Eli Roth has made another movie, you know, this past November, Thanksgiving, and I will say, like I said, I am going to be talking about some spoilers, like, mainly the kills and a little bit of the plot, some of the characters too. That way it'll help you guys get a better understanding of like the characters and why the killer is killing, you know. So yeah, I really liked it, and I'll get more into that. So the movie starts, you know, as far as the killer reveal, I'm not gonna spoil that. I want everybody to experience that killer reveal. I don't even want to ruin that, so I'm not gonna ruin that. So, alright, so the movie starts with a person of interest. I don't know if that's the right word, but the movie starts with a first-person perspective of someone breathing heavily, walking to this door, and then they ring the doorbell, and it turns out it's the sheriff, who's played by Patrick Dempsey. Yes, that's right, Patrick Dempsey is in this movie. He's really the only recognizable cast member of the whole cast for me, because I've seen him previously in Scream 3, so that's where I know him from, but you might know him from other stuff as well. So the sheriff is, Patrick Dempsey's character, and he's going to this guy's house named Mitch, and the sheriff is having Thanksgiving dinner with this guy Mitch and his wife Amanda, and I think Amanda's like mom and like some of their family members, I'm pretty sure. But he goes in, they all sit down, and they're getting ready to have Thanksgiving dinner. This movie takes place Thanksgiving in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And then Mitch, he ends up getting called in by his boss to work on Black Friday at the Right Mart store. That's pretty much kind of like a Walmart knockoff, but of course they can't name it Walmart, so they named it, it's Right Mart. So he's got to go in because Mitch is the manager. So he goes to the store to get ready for the Black Friday sale because they have waffle irons for anyway, they have a sale for waffle irons, and there's a bunch of people just arguing and cussing and over waffle irons. Yes, this is absurd, right? The movie gets a lot more serious, trust me. This is like the most absurd part, in my opinion. People are really cussing each other out and telling them, look, if you get in my face, I'm gonna knock your ass to the ground, and all this crap over waffle irons. It's kind of funny, but anyway. So then the guy that owns the Right Mart store that called in Mitch, the manager, his name is Thomas, and him and his family and his daughter and the owner's daughter, Jess, is her mom died or something, I'm pretty sure. So she's got a stepmom, Kathleen. Her name's Kathleen, not Catherine. But anyway, she's just wearing shirt and jeans, and she pretty much tells her, shirt and the jeans, that's not very fancy, or she says something like that to her, and she's gives her a little back talk. Jess gives her a little back talk because she's like, this is my house or whatever. It's she's just giving her some back talk. These are she's a high schooler, and Jess has her boyfriend Bobby. I shouldn't have done that, but anyway, Jess has her boyfriend Bobby over, and he's a in the local area of Plymouth, he's a famous baseball pitcher. No, maybe not a pitcher, but anyway, the point is, he's a baseball star in the local area, and Jess and Bobby are going to go to the movies, so her dad, Thomas, like, alright, you two have fun, blah, 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 right? So, Jess and Bobby go get in this car with their friend group of Gabby, Evan, Eula, I think her name is Eula, she's supposed to be a Russian, and then this guy named Scuba. Yes, I'm not even kidding, his name is Scuba. There's a whole joke about his name, which is, some people might find it funny, but, so they all get in the car, and before they're supposed to go to the movies, they end up stopping at the Right Mart store, because, like, one of them wants to go in there and get something, even though they're not supposed to be in there before the store opens, but because Jess's dad, Thomas, is the owner of the store, she has a key to sneak into the back, and they get into the store, and this is where the shit starts to hit the fan. When they're in the store, all the people outside see them, they're like, hey, what the hell are they doing in there? They're not supposed to be in there. And then in the meantime, that's when Patrick Dempsey's character and then Mitch's wife, they go to the store because Amanda wanted to bring Mitch some Thanksgiving leftovers because she felt bad that he had to go in to work, and Patrick Dempsey's character is there for additional security as well, as he is the sheriff of the town. So mainly Evan, I believe it's mainly Evan and one other person. They're kind of taunting the people outside, especially Evan. Evan he's a douche, absolutely, but he's the one that's really egging them on, and a bunch of stuff starts to kick in. So Patrick Dempsey tells one of the security guards to go in the store to lock the doors, but like I said, all hell breaks loose. They end up pushing past the gate, and they're all trying to get into the store, all the customers, and, well, they end up banging hard enough, and they end up breaking some of the doors. They end up breaking one part of the doors, and then the doors end up landing on the security guard, and, well, the security guard, he gets trampled to death. Poor guy, he was just doing his job. But I mean, you would think they would have a little bit more security. They only had 2 security guards. The one security guard is getting trampled to death. The other, he runs out of there. He don't want nothing to do with that mob. So I don't know where he goes, but he's disappeared. And then this one random guy, I think this part's supposed to be funny. This one guy, it's one of the customers, he ends up getting pushed into a piece of the glass where the door was broken, and a part of his neck is sliced open. I know that doesn't sound funny, but just let me get to it. He ends up, as he's bleeding out, hell or high water, he's getting a waffle iron. So even though he's sitting there, walking, bleeding out, and he's dying, he's getting him a waffle iron, and he ends up getting his hands on one of the waffle irons, and he just lays on the ground dying with the waffle iron in his hand, and the poor guy can't even rest in peace with the waffle iron, because this woman, as all hell's breaking loose and they're all fighting over the waffle irons, the poor guy, this woman, he ends up taking the waffle iron, and he just, yep, there he goes. He just, R.I.P. right there in the store. No waffle iron for you. And then the security guard has been trampled to death. The one guy, he ends up getting killed trying to get a waffle iron. And then in all of that, the manager's wife, Amanda, she ends up tripping, And these two people are fighting over the waffle irons, and they're pushing buggies, the grocery carts, and then they end up slamming into Amanda's head. Like, ooh, like, it's like the impact, it's like, damn, this scene, it's pretty well done. And yeah, so both of them fighting over, pushing each other's carts, and they end up just bashing, accidentally, of course, end up just ramming into Amanda's skull, and part of one of the buggy's wheels is caught up in her hair, and one of them is pushing the cart, and it's just a piece of her scalp is just, it's getting pulled off. Trust me, that's not the grossest part of the movie. There's one death I would want to talk about, but I don't know how descriptive I can get. It gets bad shit crazy, y'all. So yeah, you have 3 deaths at the Black Friday debacle. The poor security guard, the guy that was trying to get that waffle iron, and then the manager's wife. Then about a year later, it cuts to about a year later, and the killer, you gotta remember, this whole incident at the Right Mart store is what is behind why the killer starts killing. So if this whole accident didn't happen with the 3 deaths at the store, this movie would have never been what it is. So you gotta remember that. So a year later, the killer is watching the news reports talking about, the Right Mart, once again, they're going to have Black Friday, and they're going to have additional security. And the killer, they call him the John Carver Killer, because he wears this John Carver mask, who was the first governor of Plymouth, Massachusetts, or New Colony, Plymouth, New Colony, right? So that's, they got the killer based off a real person. And the killer's watching the news reports, and he's in this room, and there's different shots of a meat tenderizer, an axe, and they're kind of giving you a preview of the weapons that he's going to end up using. And oh boy, these kills they're very creative. And one thing I forgot to say, during the Right Mart Black Friday debacle, Bobby is actually trying to, the baseball player, he ends up getting his arm broken in the process, but he didn't die. That's why I forgot to mention that, because even though he was trying to help somebody get up, someone just, really just steps on his arm so hard it ends up breaking his arm, pretty much ending his baseball career. And, but anyway, let me get back to the killer. The killer's watching the news reports, and he's got photos of Jess, Evan, pretty much he's got photos of Jess and her friend group. Those are the people specifically he's gonna go after. The John Carver Killer is gonna go after these people, and he's got a couple of other people targeted as well. And the first person he decides to go after, this is one of the characters I'm going to mention by name, because this is pretty nasty, but not the grossest. He goes after the diner. He goes to the diner because there was a waitress that works at the diner that was at the store during that incident. The waitress was actually the one to ram into Amanda's head with her cart. So the killer decides to go after her first. She's getting ready to lock up, and she's getting ready to grab her pocketbook and lock the doors, and that's when the John Carver Killer, he comes from behind her with this jump scare and grabs her, and he dunks her head into this sink full of water, pulls her head back up, opens the freezer door, and sticks her face and hand on the freezer door. and he's getting ready to grab his axe to cut her in half, but she manages to not only pull a part of her face away, but also rips her fingertips off. And if you know me, if you've been here for a while, that was, you might have heard me mention that I don't like anything involving, like, fingernails getting pulled off. So for me, this was like, oh, nah, oh, hell nah, I can't. No, thank you. So yeah, she manages to just she barely just gets away. She rips part of her cheek off and her fingertips off of one hand, and she ends up running to the security room, and she's going to call 911, but she can't get to her, where her phone has blood on it, and the fact that she doesn't have any fingertips, she can't, panicking, not thinking. She's trying to get access to her phone to call the police, but she can't, so she decides to hightail it out of there, and she's looking in her pocketbook, and she can't find her keys, and then when the killer, during that altercation, the killer took her car keys, and when she's in line side of the killer, in view side of the killer, he starts the car up, and she's running straight toward the dumpster. She gets halfway in there, and that's when the killer rams into the dumpster, and the dumpster lid closes and cuts her in half. Yes! Yes! This is what I was talking about. The kills are very creative, and they feel different. So that's one kill that, like, whoa, not even Scream would do something like that. Like, hey, you're going to cut a woman in half, or cut anyone in half by ramming into it and the lid closes on them. So this guy, he ends up, the John Carver killer, he ends up taking the lower half of her body that was just cut from the dumpster lid, and goes to the Right Mart store and drops the lower half of her body on the star of the Right Mart sign on top of the store, which is kind of wild, because they get a call next thing in the morning, and you see the lower half of her body just sitting on the star of the logo on the store. So they end up going to the diner, but what's this? The top half of her body is gone, and you're thinking, well, she did fall into the dumpster, but not all the way, so, like, what the hell could he have done with the top half of her body? Well, we'll find out. We'll get there soon enough. We'll find that answer out. The next person I want to talk about is the other security guard that ran away while the other one got trampled to death. The second one, he's next on the John Carver's killer hit list. He's pretty much calling him a coward for running away that night, so he's next up on the list. So the guy, the security guard, he's getting ready to he says he's going on a vacation, but he's like, he knows shit's kicking off, so he's deciding to take a vacation. So he's packing up his stuff, got his passport, and then he's got this cat he's named Dewey, which is kind of interesting. That might be a reference to Scream. I just find it interesting he happened to name his cat Dewey. The character Dewey from Scream, which I thought that was kind of interesting. That might be a direct reference to Scream, which, okay, So the guy, he's getting ready to get his stuff together, and he lays his passport on his coffee table, and then he goes to the bedroom to get something, and then he notices his passport has been picked up. So he goes back in the bedroom to make sure it's not in there. And then he goes back into the living room, and he sees a John Carver mask laying on his couch. So yeah, the killer's there. and his cat is in the kitchen just like wagging his tail. He's wanting some food, like that's what the cat wants, and he's like screaming out like, hey, you better not mess with me, MFer, I kill people every day, you know, which the killer knows that he ran away, he doesn't kill nobody, so, you know, that's kind of funny. And he gets closer to the kitchen and he asks, you know, Dewey, have you seen him? Where is he at? And then next thing you know, he's distracted enough, focusing on his cat. Next thing you know, he gets stabbed with an electric carving knife in the stomach, and it's just going, it's plugged up. And then as he pulls that out, I think he pulls that out, but it doesn't matter. He's about to get killed here any second anyway. So the killer gets behind him and wraps a wire around the security guard's neck, and he decapitates the security guard. So I think the John Carver killer was watching some Walking Dead, specifically Alpha, because that one part in season 9 where she decaps that woman with a piece of wire, that's what that reminds me of Alpha, when he did that. Oh man, I honestly like that death a lot better than the first one. It looked a little bit more, it didn't look as fake. So once his head pops off, he picks up his head and he puts it in a bag and he's getting ready to walk out of the apartment. Then the John Carver killer sees the cat. He turns around and you're thinking, oh no, he's gonna kill the cat, right? No, he actually does the opposite. He actually ends up feeding the cat his food and rubs the cat on his head, and he leaves with the guy's head. Usually when animals are involved in horror movies, usually they end up getting it. Well, not in this case. I was actually surprised about that one. So I guess the John Carver killer has a soft spot for animals, maybe? But, so he takes his head, and you're wondering, what the hell is he going to do with his head, right? So, the John Carver killer has this table set up with these plates and these assigned names, and what do you know? He takes the guy's head out of the bag and puts it on one plate, and then the top half of the waitress, she's there sitting at one of the seats of the table as well. So what does this crazy fool have planned? Well, one thing I did forget to mention, I'm going to go ahead and mention it. There's this social media account named The John Carver, and he tags Jess and all of her friends in the group, and all of them have their names set. They all have their names at each plate, so they each have a chair at the table. So yeah, the waitress is already there, which they're not there yet. I'm going back a little bit, but by the time the waitress and the security guard are dead, Jess gets a picture of the same table, but the security guard's head is there, and the top half of the waitress have already been added to the table, still waiting on Jess, Evan, Gabby, Scuba, probably Eula as well. So the next kill is this guy from another high school. He's a jock that ended up getting into a fight with Evan. That already happened before the movie started. So anyway, he's got a cheerleader girlfriend, and she's like telling him, like, you know, I want to show you something. So he ends up following her, and she's got this trampoline in a gym, and she starts jumping on it, and she's just gonna tease him, and he's setting off in the distance, the guy is, and the John Carver killer sneaks up behind him and twists his head, you know, it turns his head all the way around, which, I mean, it does look fake, but the idea of this movie is for the kills. So yes, it might look kind of bad, but it's like, ooh, damn, it's still so good. And then once he's taken care of the boyfriend, then how do you think he's going to handle the cheerleader? Well, he sticks a knife through the trampoline. She steps on the knife and she just gets stabbed to death. So there you go. And then, let's see, I'm trying to think of the next death here. Okay, we got the trampoline and then the head going back. We got those two. Then the next one, hold on, let's see, I'm trying to remember. The next death is no, okay. The next death doesn't take place for a little bit. So there's some stuff that goes on at the high school, and Gabby and Evan end up getting abducted by the killer, because they end up separating, which is never a good idea, and the killer ends up getting her two friends. So the killer's hoping to kidnap her as well, but she gets lucky enough and smart enough to see the killer behind her, because the killer's using Gabby's phone to text her to lure her to a secluded area. And when the screen turns, cuts off of the phone, she sees the killer behind her, and he swings but misses. Now, you got to remember, this is the first person to actually be able to do something, a little something, but you got to remember, these are high schoolers, not like adults, so I do kind of forgive them for that, because they're not, they're supposed to be going to high school. They're not experienced fighters, you know what I mean? So she ends up running away, and she ends up, there's this like bucket or like a whatever, I don't know the term for it, but it's this thing, it looks like a big giant bucket on wheels, and she ends up pushing that into the killer, and she runs away, and she ends up running into the cosmetology section of the high school, and she hides in there, and of course she's trying to blend in with the mannequin heads on the table, and she's actually trying to grab a pair of scissors to defend herself, but a can of hairspray ends up falling, and she grabs that and sprays the killer in the face and runs out the school like she should have done, but she got lucky. She did just enough not to end up getting killed, so, hey, good for Jess, you know what I mean? So, Patrick Dempsey, yeah, I haven't talked about him. Like, his character, he's still the sheriff, and he's pretty nice to everyone, and I think he's better in this movie than he was in Scream 3's. I actually really liked his character. I liked his performance anyway. So, he acts all nice. He doesn't act shady or nothing like that. And they do a pretty good job at setting up a couple of characters to be red herrings, to have you think, ooh, maybe this person is the killer, maybe that person is the killer, because, for one example, Bobby, he pretty much disappears for a whole year. He's cut everybody off. And there you go. That's a red herring right there. Like, they're having you think, well, maybe he couldn't forgive what happened that night, and he's gonna take matters into his own hands, right? Maybe he's gonna start killing his former friends. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not gonna really spoil that. Like I said, the killer reveal, I'm gonna zip my lips and throw away the key on that killer reveal. But anyway, so Jess has this new boyfriend, Ryan, and they make him a red herring too, because he gets mad easily. He gets kind of jealous because Kathleen, it's revealed by Jess that Kathleen actually deleted the security footage of the Right Mart incident at the beginning of the movie, because, like, her reasoning is because they didn't want bad publicity I hope I said that word, but you guys know what I mean. So she's like, oh, we don't need any more bad press and bad publicity. So she deleted the footage, and that kind of like, oh, that kind of maybe makes her a red herring a little bit. But I don't know, you know. So they go, Jess and Bobby go back to her house to get the footage, and Ryan goes to the house and sees that Bobby is there, because Bobby's like works for his uncle with his tow truck company or whatever, and he gets jealous, mad, and that kind of like, ooh, you know, maybe he's gonna go take it out on somebody by killing him. Again, they do a good job at setting up a couple of characters as red herrings, and the most obvious red herring is the former manager Mitch of the Right Mart store, because obviously he was either fired or he quit, and he's like so pissed off at Thomas, and he's like, your family should, you and your family should be locked up. My wife's murder is on your hands, you know. So he's a little bit too much, he's too obvious. It's not Mitch, I will tell you that. It's way too obvious for it to be Mitch, because he is pretty much open on how much he hates Thomas and his family and wants to see them in jail for the death of his wife. So it's obviously not Mitch. So let's go to the next death. So there's a certain character that this certain character is being forced to go back to Florida because of all this stuff with the John Carver killer, and they're packing up, and the John Carver killer, he ends up knocking out the father of one of the teens, and there's a police officer there helping keep watch. The police officer and the dad of one of these high schoolers ends up getting knocked out by a tranquilizer dart. Yes, that's right. John Carver killer. He doesn't kill every single person up to this point. He has. So he ends up knocking out people that aren't on his list, and he's going after this one high schooler, and they're getting ready, and they're putting their eye contacts in, and the killer, he ends up sneaking into their bedroom, and she's so oblivious, they are so oblivious that he's even there. He's like right there, and he's hiding, but you can clearly see him hiding, and she's getting ready, and next thing you know, they see the killer behind them, and those corn cob holders, the killer stabs them in both ears with the corn cob holders, and they're screaming in pain, and they pull them out, and you can hear the high-pitched noises as if she really is deaf, and the killer just messed up their hearing. Oh man, that's like a really good scene, because they're putting us in the shoes of someone's hearing that is messed up. And there's one time that my hearing was temporarily messed up due to water being in it one time, and I'm like, okay, they did a really good job with that scene. And you know, the one person is talking to their friends, and Jess and this other guy, Scuba, he sees that the killer's there, so they decide to go to the house, and there's this part of the house that's wrapped up in, you know, that's got like plastic wrap and stuff that, you know, they're doing construction and stuff on one part of the house, and there's a table saw, and he's got her like as a hostage, and the killer is showing Jess and Scuba the fact that he's got Evan and Gabby at that table with the other two that are already there. and he ends up starting up the John Carver killer. He ends up starting up the saw table, and he pushes the high schooler into it, and it cuts them all up. Ooh, like that's not even the worst of it, but that's pretty nasty though. And both Scuba and Jess are in shock, the fact that they had to watch their friend die right there in front of their eyes in such a pretty bad way. But I don't know, it gets worse. It gets worse for sure. And yes, the practical effects look, I mean, they don't look, I've seen worse. They could look better, but at least it's not CGI, so I'll give Eli Roth that. So the Thanksgiving Day parade is the next day, so the cops and all of them come up with a plan to try to catch the John Carver killer, and at first they're like, no, like before they come up with the plan, they're like, no, we're not gonna do that. Then the cops decide to come up with a plan, like, okay, we're gonna catch this son of a bitch. So they're gonna try to catch him, but it doesn't go according to plan, obviously, because we haven't gotten to the end game just yet. So they have the parade, and Jess, Thomas, Kathleen, and Scuba, they're all dressed up as pilgrims. That's part of their parade float. And of course, Mitch and these other people, they wear these John Carver masks because they are protesters. And when they get closer to Thomas and his family's float, they decide to stop the float, and they're like, y'all need to go to jail. They're pretty much protesters, and that gives the killer an opportunity to strike. So the killer knows that the police are going to be looking for a pilgrim wearing a John Carver mask, but this is where the killer gets pretty slick, and he's there. The John Carver killer is there, but he wears a totally different outfit altogether. He ends up disguising himself as a clown because he walks up to the turkey mascot and he just chops his head off in front of everybody in the broad daylight. And oh man, everybody's screaming, and it's all going off. And so the killer has struck at the parade, and this is where maybe potentially one of the most brutal deaths, but this is an accidental death, not caused by the killer. So once all the chaos has begun, this guy that's driving the float with Thomas and his family, there's a part of the prop that ends up breaking loose and ends up going through the window, in through the back of the guy's head and out his face, and it kills the guy. And what's even worse about that is his grandchildren are there in the truck with him, and they have to experience that, and they're little kids. So like, oh shit, like that wasn't, the killer didn't do that. No, that was accidental. And they're screaming, everybody else is screaming, all this is kicking off, and that's when one of the police officers gets Jess, Thomas, and Scuba into a sheriff's car. Then the police officer, I should say, the police officer ends up getting knocked out by the killer with the dart gun that he used earlier, and then that's when he knocks out Thomas, Jess, and Scuba, and ends up taking the police car and drives off with them three, with all that chaos happening. And here's the next kill. Again, I'm going to be careful how I say this, because this, without a doubt, is the most brutal fate, and this character specifically gets the worst fate out of everyone else. Now, what I mentioned, I know where the thing goes through the grandfather's face, that sounds brutal. That's not the worst fate, no. That's not the worst fate. All I will say is this one character is passed out on a table, and the John Carver killer is brushing cooking oil on them, putting sea salt on them, and peppering them up. I won't say what character that goes to, but that's all I'm gonna say about it, because the presentation of it, it made me want to almost gag. That's how gross it is. So, like I said, the person's been brushed with cooking oil. They got salt, pepper on them. They got some basil on them. You want to get, you know, if you really want to know, you can look it up or watch the movie. That's as much as I'm describing about it. But anyway, the person ends up waking up, and they're pretending they're passed out, and, well, they end up getting up and trying to escape the place that they're in, and there's a pretty, it's a pretty good, like, chase scene and, like, just evading scene. There's tension there because you're hoping this person can get out, potentially, but then there's one scene where the person goes into this one room, but they end up stepping into some blood, and their feet print are kind of, they're pretty much giving them away to the killer, and the killer is like, pretty much, he's acting like, the John Carver killer is acting like, okay, they got away, so he ends up walking off. He closes the door, but that's to trick the person that thinks that they just got away, but he ends up stabbing through the wall to get them out of their hiding spot, and they try to run out the door, and the person gets outside only for the John Carver killer to throw a pitchfork into their back, and they're done, and they end up going into a oven. That's all. I'm not going to get any more descriptive than that, because after that, the John Carver killer has the friends group, and he has his dinner scene, and it's pretty wild, man. That's all I'm going to talk about regarding Thanksgiving, just because I don't want to get into any more spoilers, because we're kind of getting a little closer to the killer reveal, but not quite there. But I'm going to leave it off there. The kills are very creative, and there's one part where the John Carver killer, he's making jokes, and he ends up tenderizing some meat. That's for sure, man. Like, I gotta say, I really liked Thanksgiving. I ended up liking it a whole lot better than Scream 6. Yeah, you heard that here. I am a Scream fan. It's my favorite horror franchise, but man, what Eli Roth does with Thanksgiving, despite that one part that almost made me want to gag, this is one Eli Roth movie I think I could watch multiple times, honestly. I still think Hostel 1 and Hostel 2 are definitely a lot more gorier, but Thanksgiving to me is like right after Hostel 1 and 2 in the gore factor. It's definitely crazy, and as he's tenderizing meat, he's cracking jokes at the same time, but of course he's got a voice modulator to disguise his voice, and he says that this Thanksgiving dinner is going to be the most famous since 1621. I think the John Carver killer is correct. If you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Oh my god. Now, this doesn't mean I'm completely crapping all over Scream 6. No, I still very much enjoy Scream 6, but there's some things I think Scream 6 still does pretty well, but honestly, there's some things I think Thanksgiving does better than Scream 6. Like, for example, the killer reveal is a lot better in Thanksgiving than it is in Scream 6. That's my personal opinion, and I think I've seen that maybe not a whole lot, but if you're into horror, and especially slashers, and you haven't seen Thanksgiving, I would absolutely give Thanksgiving a watch. It's, it's a movie I won't be forgetting anytime soon, so, yeah, that's all of my thoughts on Thanksgiving, and, yeah, you know what, my Thanksgiving movie actually came with a digital code, I believe, so I might post that on my community tab of my YouTube page, so be on the lookout for that, because I believe it's a free digital code. If it is, I'm going to double check. I might just post it on there so I can give one of you the chance to be lucky enough to watch this movie. I don't know, I can't spoil that killer reveal. Nah, just go watch the movie. I recommend the movie. It is much better than Scream 6, in my opinion. The kills are definitely a lot more creative, and they feel different from one another. So that's all I got for you guys for today. Sorry this video is as long as it is. I just wanted to go ahead and get all of this off of my chest, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about this movie. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by and for your continued support, or if you're new, welcome in for the first time. All of you are very awesome, and I thank you again. And don't forget to hit the bell and switch on all notifications so you know the second I upload to YouTube. I am Buck Beak, and I'm gonna go fly away back to my nest. Until next time, bye guys.